The Force will be with you, always.
Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Hi, this is Nick Anastasiou, story editor on Star Wars The Clone Wars and Star Wars Bad Batch. And you are listening to Aggressive Negotiations.
You have made contact with Aggressive Negotiations, the Star Wars podcast on the Nerd Party Network that is your key to all of the hidden nooks and crannies of a galaxy far, far away, finding itself at an exciting time in Star Wars franchise history, and in celebration of that, going through The Mandalorian Season 2. I am one of your hosts, the humble Jedi Master John Mills, and with me is the keeper of Mandalorian lore and, oddly enough, Imperial typography manuals, Jedi Master Matthew Rushing. Matt, how are you, and what is the default font that we should be using for our Imperial memoranda?
Well, yes, that would be Palpatine 0. Yes,
very good.
Palpatine reset everything in his 0 year, and so the font is just called Palpatine, of course, because everything was called Palpatine back then.
That's true. Got very confusing for a moment when everything was called Palpatine.
Exactly. It's like going to Atlanta and everything is Peach Street.
Yes.
So this is exactly like that. Yes.
Well, the trick is you want to go down Palpatine Way, and then you hang a right at Palpatine Street. Then you're going to cross over Palpatine Cul-de-sac, and you're going to go
Palpatine
to one
Place. Don't forget about that.
Yes. Well, I mean, yes, my bad. I forgot Palpatine Place. And then you're at Palpatine Plaza. You got to go through that. And then you'll get to the Palpatine business complex. And then,
Which is on
you'll
Palpatine
find your way around.
Court.
Well, yes. Oh, well, yeah, honestly, it makes more sense when you're down there. It's just, talking about it is weird. But what is not weird is when you go down to Apple Podcasts or any other podcast catcher of your choice, and you go ahead and you give us a star rating and review. We really appreciate it. It's the best thing. Connect with us on the socials. We are at the Jedi Masters on X Twitter. We are at Join Nerd Party as a network on X Twitter, and we are the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram, and we are far too old and lazy to go onto any other services, so that's where you're going to find us. And of course, thenerdparty.com/contact if you want to send angry letters to Matt, and only Matt, about everything. In fact, doesn't even have to be about Star Wars. You're mad about something? Send it to Matt at thenerdparty.com/contact. Please, by all means, whatever you're angry about. So, all right. Here we are as we go through, and we've had a series of bangers in season 2 of The Mandalorian up to this point, and we come to an episode that it's chapter 15, The Believer, first aired on December 11th, 2020. Oh, so many years ago. How wonderful it was to have that show at that time, help us get through some times. So The Believer comes along, and here we go with another rally the troops sort of bridge episode. There's a lot of episodes where we're gathering people, where we're moving along. We've just had the tragedy, and now we're going to take another breath to go along and have this episode, The Believer, where again, we're going to be examining the depth of the Mandalorian's belief systems and how flexible they are. And so we find ourselves reunited with Bill Burr coming back to
then I
the
saw
show.
his face.
Yeah.
Now I'm a believer. Sorry, it had to be done.
It had to be done. So Miggs Mayfeld comes back, a fan favorite from season 1, and we finally find out what has happened to him. So going into this episode, obviously we're all keyed up from the tragedy, and we have this episode here. And Matt, I want you to basically just give me your first reactions back then that you can remember. And then on the rewatch here, did it hold up for you? Was it the same type of thing, or did anything shift for you here?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember how I felt about this episode when it came out. Obviously, that's a long time ago at this point, 6 years. But if I recall correctly, I remember very much liking this episode because I felt like it was a fantastic penultimate episode of the season to kind of set everything where it needed to be. The stinger at the end is just so great with, him showing up on Moff Gideon's ship, in the hologram and telling him basically, you done messed up, Aaron. I'm coming for you. It's just fantastic. And so, and I think, like you said too, there's just something about the way in which this also reminds me of, those video games or the D&D game or type of thing where, the council gets together to set in motion the plan to enact the finale or the final battle type of thing. And so that's very much what's going on here. And I mean, honestly, I'm not quite sure what there isn't to love about this episode, even on the rewatch, because like you said, the thing that this really digs into is how far will you go to protect who you love? What will you give up? What do you truly believe in? What's important? Is it more important that you keep your helmet on all the time or that you save your kid? Right? Like, where are your priorities? And I think at this point in the series, to get that moment where the helmet comes off, we see his face, and we know why he's doing it because there's no other choice. I think it's incredibly moving, but I also do think that it's such a wonderful thematic question to be asking in the Star Wars universe at this point, right? Is it better for people that the New Republic's here? Did it matter if who's in power? And what do you truly believe in just as a person in your everyday life? Like, all of these big questions that kind of get thrown out there, and some of them we kind of get answers to through Mando, and others are just kind of left hanging that we're going to continue to play with the Mandalorian series in general. I just think is great, right? And so, I mean, to me, then and now, I would say that this continues to be, and there are a lot of explosions in this episode, so it's an absolute banger for me even now. So what about you, though, John? Do you respond as favorably as you did back then? Was it favorable then? Or did this episode even go up in your estimation or down?
Well, I mean, this is definitely one where I remember, and you got a lot with what you've said that I really want to get into, but like, if we're talking first reactions, I saw in it immediately in its DNA a tribute to Wages of Fear, which is an incredible film that friend of the show, Nick Anastasio, first introduced us to. And it's now one of my favorite films, like absolutely, like if you haven't seen Wages of Fear, you got to go see Wages of Fear, everybody. And then there was a 1970s Roy Scheider movie, came out in 1977, as a matter of fact, same year as Star Wars, that was based on Wages of Fear, called Sorcerer. I don't think it's as good as the original, but a lot of people love it as much as, mileage may vary, no pun intended. So I saw in the DNA right there a tribute to great film and great cinema, to be Scorsese about it for a minute, which is the very DNA of Star Wars itself. When I see those types of callbacks, it warms my heart because it's a moment to teach film history through modern film. And I think that's a beautiful thing, and that's what should always be done. Now, my first reactions even keyed off of that. I want to go with what you're talking about and what the episode's obviously about. How far will you go? Where will you compromise your beliefs for what will you compromise them? And there's something that the Jesuits call descending into the particulars, wherein the idea is you have your belief system, and then when you come to the specific instance wherein it's brought in direct conflict with something, in this case, the greater good of Grogu's well-being, how far do you go? What is more important in that moment? For instance, thou shalt not lie. Lying is a sin. But if I tell a lie, I will save somebody's life. Therefore, that's descending into the particulars. I will lie in that situation because the greater good demands that I hedge a little bit on that. If I'm an absolutist, then I'm a Sith. And what good is that? And I think what's really interesting about it, and this will, I think, come to play through Book of Boba Fett and then Mando Season 3, is that Mandalorian winds up realizing he's among people that won't compromise or bend for the greater good. That helmet is more important than the survival of somebody else. That is the more important thing. And so you would look at that, and I would think it sets up a future arc for the Mandalorian to look back and say, well, what am I doing here? Right? Like the outfit signifies who I am, but it's not who I am. It's a really fascinating thing. What I want to throw to you is, obviously Mayfeld's coming at it from a very negative perspective, very cynical. He's trying to get under Mando's skin about it.
Right.
What I want to ask is, does that still work? He's not coming at it from a positive argument perspective. He's coming at it from needling Mandalorian, trying to get him, in a sense, to admit his faith is wrong because he's willing to compromise in those moments. And so, does that work for you? Do they go too far with Mayfeld in this episode?
I think what makes that really fascinating is that the way that the episode ends, where one of the major action sequences takes place because they sit down, they're having a drink with this previous commanding officer of Miggs Mayfeld, and they're talking about this campaign that they are on during Operation Cinder. Great drop there from, the Star Wars extended universe that had been created for, the sequel era and just in general now with Disney owning Star Wars. So nice continuity there. Appreciate that. And so they're talking about this idea of is it okay basically to allow hundreds of thousands of troops and people to die, quote unquote, for the greater good? Or is there a point where it's too much, right? And of course, this officer, this Imperial officer is saying, yeah, it was for the greater good. It doesn't really matter. The glory of the Empire, that's really what matters. And Miggs Mayfeld just shoots him in the face. And I think that in that moment, there is our key to understanding that he has something he believes in, which is that people should not be sacrificed on the altar of the glory of something nebulous like the Empire, in the way that this person is talking about it. And I think that's really interesting because I think there becomes a real understanding between Din and Miggs makes the move that he does because he's seen what it is that's truly important to Din, and he is finally going to reveal what truly matters to him. It's getting rid of people that treat others like commodities.
Well,
I don't know. Do you agree with that?
Well, I like what you're saying there, and I'm glad you're talking about the scene in specific because Richard Brake is the name of the actor who plays the Imperial commander, and I think that he deserved some sort of award for this because his specific performance elevates this episode.
Absolutely.
He absolutely was spellbinding, and he's still spellbinding on the rewatch. He sells me as somebody who is just so incredibly evil and so committed to the cause. That's what we're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Like Mayfeld he professes no belief system.
Right.
Mando has a belief system. And then we see this evil Imperial commander's belief system. So at the end of it, I would argue that Mayfeld becomes a believer. He discovers in that moment that he has beliefs, and he had just sort of tamped all of that down because it was too painful to remember them. And I think that Burr plays it completely perfectly. Rick Fumi, I always mess up his last name, Fumiyawa, I think is how you pronounce his last name, directed this episode.
We love you, Rick.
And he got such a performance out of Burr. Mm-hmm. Such a wonderful performance out of Burr,
agreed.
Up to and including the necessary beat in a movie or a series or an episode like this, where the person who does the thing is given that moment to look at the other character and be like, I had to. Like we all know, it's like it's like the Django Unchained moment where Christoph Waltz shoots Leonardo DiCaprio, and he turns around and he looks at Django and he's like, I had no choice. You know, like, what did you expect me to do? There's only so far I can go. But I think that it's also great because I think, especially with some of the modern fandom, this episode examines a very uncomfortable fact that, let's say you have the Empire and Mayfeld was basically, you know, he wasn't a stormtrooper, but he was in the armor. And it's easy to look at and say, oh, they're all fanatics. But you realize Mayfeld was a soldier doing a job. And it's such a humanizing thing to look at Mayfeld's character and feel that empathy for him and be like, man, he suddenly realizes everything was a lie.
Yeah.
And like, you know, this guy played by Richard Brake is just that ultimate avatar of it. It's truly fascinating.
Well, I think
when you break it down,
I think the beauty of it too is that you realize that Mayfeld's character is the type of person that this guy is talking about.
Yep.
And so it makes sense as to why there is this feeling in Mayfeld that like, no, this is not correct. This is not right. There is a point, you know, to quote Captain Picard, the line must be drawn here, this far and no farther, right? That's the line for Mayfeld, and he proves it. And I think that that's what just makes that so interesting. And right, it's also being played out, you see, in like characters like Cara Dune and Boba Fett and Fennec Shand, right? They're all on this mission because there is something for them that's more important than anything else that's going on in their life, right? You know, Cara Dune pulling out Miggs Mayfeld from this security center is putting her career as a marshal on the line because rescuing this kid is as important or more important to her than what she is doing, which we've seen is good because we've already seen the ramifications of what she and Grief Karga have been able to do over on Navarro. They've cleaned that place up. You know, she's doing great work. If she gets taken out as marshal, she wouldn't be able to do that. But to put that in danger is worth it for her because of the danger, you know, to this child and knowing how special this child is, right? And you learn a lot about, of course, Boba Fett here and Fennec Shand as well, where they may be bounty hunters, but their word truly is their bond, right? And so I think what's really interesting here is that we are kind of spending an entire episode figuring out these characters in really subtle and interesting ways. And we're not really having to talk a lot about it, right? Like we're not getting conversations between Fennec Shand and Cara Dune, who are spending a whole episode together about this subject, right? They're showing us through their actions who they are and what they believe. Boba Fett's doing the same thing. And so I think that's one of the things that actually makes this episode so strong is that it's so much show, don't tell, even when important conversations are being had, say, by Miggs and Din, right, where he's throwing barbs at him. But what's backed up is not them having to have another conversation about it, but the actions that they take next. Din being willing to remove his helmet and Miggs being willing to shoot an Imperial dude in the face, knowing he could die for it, right? I think it's just one of those places where I'm not sure that The Mandalorian really, in a lot of ways, got the credit it deserved with the way in which in 38 minutes we're telling this type of story with this type of depth for these characters. And there's no question about what it is that the motivation behind them, because
Right.
it's all there on screen, man. And it doesn't have to just come through dialogue. It's every single part of the episode is reinforcing the thematic elements of these characters and this episode.
Well, I think also there's a, you mentioned the duration of the episode. An episode like this is very easy to wind up running too long. You can
Agreed.
get very
Yep.
indulgent with that stuff, and they don't. And that's another credit to the director here and everybody that put it together. One last question before we go, though. I mean, obviously, we have some very expansive digital sets here, and some very ambitious use of the technology. Coming back to it, the magician's trick this time. You know what to look for, what sleight of hand is going on. Where do the effects fall down, if at all? Do the effects fall down? Does the volume disappoint at any point for you?
It's interesting. I had to watch this one on my computer because of time today, but I was actually pretty impressed by the way it felt like it was holding up. I felt like, that whole sequence on the truck was just great.
I'm glad you call it out. It's incredible, like what they did with that. That was obscene how good that was.
And
it really was.
And the fact that everything about that Juggernaut sequence looks the way it does, from just the choreography of the fight scene, just the way the visual effects are all working together, is just really impressive. And I think it's one of those things too, where this is the 7th episode of the 2nd season. And I think in a lot of ways, this is one of those episodes you can tell they had just learned a lot of things. And they're really starting to implement. It's kind of like, I think The Mandalorian in a lot of ways is akin to the Clone Wars in that sense. When they started Lucasfilm Animation, they're making it up as they go along, in the sense that everything they're trying to do is something that was pretty unique for animation at the time. And so they're continuing to kind of refine their process until, you think of the fact that Maul Shadow Lord is about to come out. And you look at the trailer for that, and that is an extension of the Clone Wars animation ramped up to about 4 trillion, right? And so I think that the Mandalorian as a show is something that's kind of growing in that way, which is really cool. I think that's wonderful to see. I think it's also the type of thing that, as we look at the shows as we continue to move forward in them with The Mandalorian, and then, you got Ahsoka, and you think of Skeleton Crew and Andor and all this stuff, like they're just continually further refining what Star Wars looks like on television, and it just seems to be getting better and better as they learn. So this is an episode, I think, that pretty much nails it. So, I mean, did you think the same thing? Did you feel like there were any seams showing in this one?
Yeah, but I thought this at the time too, that some of the stuff where they're talking, planning out the mission and stuff like that, you can see the screen work. It's unavoidable. It's just so difficult to get that flatness and the lighting keys like to resolve. But that's okay. It's not something where I'm like, oh, this looks like garbage. It's just like, we're almost there, but we're not there. Which is, just a testament to how good the other stuff is. Like, I consider it like some of the stuff where the seams show is just the natural push and pull, where there's always an effect that, is sort of like, that could have used more refinement. They obviously spent more time over here. Right. But at the same time, there is nothing in this episode that is as annoying as some of the farmed out effects that you see in some of the Star Wars movies now, or some of the Marvel movies, especially, where you're like, oh, they shipped that one off to be worked on because the C team got that one. And by C team, I mean the overseas team that's just like in a mill, grinding this stuff out, as opposed to, anyway, everybody knows what I'm trying to say with that. So I think that I mean, this is another high marks episode for me. Like, it's another banger. Last question on the way out the door. How excited were you, and how excited are you to move on to the next episode?
Man, I it's funny because I'm like thinking back, and we didn't even know what was coming, right?
Nope.
We had no clue, bro. Like, just no clue.
Not a hint.
And so, to know that we're going to be revisiting this, I cannot freaking wait. It's just so great. So yes, I'm as pumped as could possibly be. John, is there any kind of rating that you would give this? If from like 1 to 5, what do you think for this one?
I know I've been a pushover, but it's a 5. I mean, the thing that puts it over the top for me is the fact that I see that Wages of Fear sorcerer callback, where I'm like I just, that type of stuff just tickles me to death.
Agreed.
And also seeing so much stormtrooper armor that I love, and the driver armor with the helmet that they're in, like
the shore troopers were back too.
You get that type of armor variety for me. I got a thing for the armor, man. I can't help it. I really can't help it.
You do like a man in armor.
I like anyone in armor. I like Cara Dune's armor. I like Fennec Shan's armor. I got an armor thing. What do you want me to do? Come on now. But even better than my armor fetish is your fetish for striking up conversations online. So where can people find you, Matt?
Well, goodness, I'm all over social media under the name Matt Rushing02. You can find me there if I'm on that network. That's the place I'll be. The name I'd be under. You can also find me here on the network doing Owl Post with Dre Kaufman, as we talked about every single chapter of the Harry Potter series. That's a completed show, so enjoy that. You can also find me over on the TFM network with a bunch of shows. 602 Club is the main show. Got all the conversations about all the franchises we love outside of Star Trek. And then I have lots of great Star Trek talk with my good friend Chris Jones over there as well. So check all of that out. But John, when you're not trying to figure out how in the world you're going to score tickets to Figure and Dan, where could people find you?
Oh my gosh, I've got my Modal Nodes cosplay all set for the next Figure and Dan concert, and you can find me as Kessel Junkie out there in the wilds of the internet. I prefer Letterboxd and Goodreads. Come on over. I love watching bad movies and reading controversial books. It's the best thing in the world. And of course, you can find me here on the network, where I am co-hosting a show called House Lights with Darren Moser and Tristan Riddell, where I educate the two of them on what their movie opinions should be. It's an arduous task, but I'm helping them one episode at a time. I invite you over there too. I consider it what I was placed on this earth for, honestly, is to help them understand film better. So, with all of that said, though, I got to tell you, we got the absolutely fantastic ride back at the Jedi Temple based on the ride that Din Djarin and Miggs Mayfeld took on this. So far, 50% of the people have survived it. So I'm going to go back and give it a try back at the temple. And Master Rushing, I think it's time to close these negotiations.
Master Mills, negotiations are closed.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.